California Trail, which extended from the Missouri River, places like St. Joseph and Independence, Missouri, and other western Missouri towns, westward over plains and Rockies to California. This trail has been fascinating study by so many people over the last 150 years or so. Even from the very time of the year 1849, the people coming west knew that they were creating history, and so many of them left divers behind. These 49ers would leave these towns on the Missouri River near Kansas City in the spring, late spring, and leaving homes and families behind to travel to what they regard as the new land of milk and honey, that is California. Now, here is a shot showing some of these westbound Argonauts on the trail, some in women and children in wagons, and driven by oxen, sometimes by horse, but more especially oxen, and other riders going west on the trail. The Western Immigrant Trail would leave western Missouri and go through Nebraska along the Platte River, and ascending in toward Wyoming, which would be the Rocky Mountains, 6,000-7,000 feet high and more, where the passes were like South Pass. Going west, and finally at a point in southern Idaho, there's a parting of the ways. Some people would go to Oregon, continue west-northwest, but more especially in 1849, close to 100,000 people traveling along the California Trail from a point in southwestern Idaho through northeastern Nevada and down near the present town of Elko along the Humboldt River, and then coming to a point south of Lovelock, where there again would be a division point on the trail. Some would follow a route to meet the Truckee River at Wadsworth, and then continue west through the modern Truckee Meadows of Reno, up and over Donner Pass, and finally into northern California along the west flank of the Sierra Nevada. Others at that point south of Lovelock, called Humboldt Bar, would go across the dreaded 40-mile desert and then would land on the Carson River and go along the Carson River from a point near Fort Churchill westward past modern Dayton, Carson City, Genoa, and then on up over the Sierra Nevada at a point west of Douglas County, a place called Woodfords, and then on up into California. So here is a shot of these pilgrims of the plains. They would soon make camp, and then they'll prepare supper, so forth. But to graphically show this map of North and South America, on the map on the right side shows that not only did they come across the plains and mountains from central United States, that is Missouri and so forth, but also many others would leave a point near New York and Philadelphia in the eastern United States, and then actually go around Cape Horn and go up through and disembark at San Francisco, or from New York or Philadelphia, go across to where the Isthmus of Panama was. This would be 60 years before the canal would be built, the Panama Canal, and go to San Francisco. In San Francisco, they would essentially and literally leave and abandon their ships, the little wooden ships, and find any conveyance to get up to the motherlode of California. And that would be, the motherlode towns sprang up like Auburn, Placerville, Jackson, Angels Camp, and so forth. So that is what was happening in 1849. For many years thereafter, although as early as 1851, immigrant travel, especially across the plains, started to diminish considerably, and would finally be almost non-existent after 1869, when the Transcontinental Railroad was built from Northern California, Sacramento, and so forth, across northern Nevada, and finally meet up with the Union Pacific at a point north of Salt Lake, and the train, of course, went all the way to the East Coast. Back in 1848, when the first discovery of gold was made in California at Sutter's Mill, to be precise, January 24th, 1848, all the land was still part of Mexico, and as you can see on this map. And the boundary of Mexico was actually Oregon, up at the top of the map. And now, with all of the illegal immigration and so forth, you might say here in the year 2011, the boundary's right back where it was in 1848. Closer look at the map showing the southwestern part of the United States being in the state of Mexico. That all changed in 1848 when the Mexican War ended. Mexico ceded all of the yellow area on this map, the southwestern portion, to the United States. And this map clearly shows the immigrant trail that I was mentioning earlier, going through Utah and near where Idaho would be, across northern Nevada and over the Sierra Nevada, at any one of 6 different points for people to settle on the west flank of the Sierra Nevada. The road to California was a treacherous one, a long one, about 5 months long. And here is a camp where people would settle in for the evening. Camps would be made every night towards sundown. Some travel 6, some travel 7 days a week, across Missouri, across Nebraska, as they were venturing westward. Here is a camp in Missouri. It looks a lot like Carson Valley, where people would camp for the night, break open kitchen utensils, cooking material, cooking supplies, prepare the evening meal, all holding for the night before darkness descend. And sometimes the wagons were arranged in a circle. Here they are not, so to guard against an Indian charge. And then also, by making a circle of wagons, it'd be a good way to keep oxen, horses, and mules in the train and securely guard them and keep them from straying. But the travel lasted about 4 months. Another good shot of coming in for the evening. And you can see here there's this fiddler is fiddling while a meal is being cooked on that open fire in the lower end of the picture. The 49ers had some sort of guides, because in 1848 there were a few people going west preparing guides to be published in books like this. But the immigrants, especially after 1850-51, were privy and had access to purchase guidebooks like Hall's Guidebook or Horn's Guidebook, and they were very popular. these guidebooks would mention water sources along the way, and even variants in the trail. Sometimes we'll take the left trail past this mountain. It's much better than going to the right, so forth. As you go through southern Idaho, northern Nevada, and so forth. Another example of a guidebook by Hall, and here's one by Hosea Horn. And his overland guide promises to guide you past rivers, creeks, lakes, springs, mountains. He gives mileage between springs, so forth. And these were snapped up and bought, and many of these guidebooks still exist today. Now, as I mentioned earlier, some people came west along the, by leaving New York and Philadelphia and going by way of Cape Horn across South America, or going across what's now Panama and then going to San Francisco. And advertisements like this would advertise people can simply get on a ship for $100 and make the trip. Of course, you had to bring your own food. Another guidebook was published by a lawyer named Langsford Hastings, and he published his guidebook. He was actually published his in 1845, and it was relied upon by immigrants. Some of them, unfortunately, relied upon in a bad way by the famous Donner Party of 1846, who took Lansford's advice, and in eastern Nevada would go along the south end of the Ruby Mountains instead of going along the Humboldt River like most others did. That caused a delay. The delay caught up with them, of course, in being trapped on the east side of the Sierra as the snow fell on the Sierra Nevada. A good close-up of Lansford Hastings, the guidebook writer. They all relied on maps by John C. Fremont, and he published his in 1845. It shows 1848 publishing here an update of maps that show the north and south mountain ranges across northern Nevada. To get your bearings, the Humboldt River is on the northern portion of the map. The northern portion of the map, and then throughout central Nevada are all those mountain ranges. Humboldt River over here, and here's Lake, what's now Lake Tahoe. People would go west over the Donner Pass or down through other passes south of Lake Tahoe. There was a committee of people beginning in 1870 that started to mark the Immigrant Trail, and they put up these T markers, which are out there in the desert. There's 72 of them. They're all in this new book called The Immigrant Trail, The Long Road to California, as to where to find them. They all have a plaque on them, as you see here, and they stretch all the way from a point north of Lovelock and even through the Reno area up over Donner Lake, or along the Carson River, all the way past Dayton, Genoa, and on up. And people go out and find these things and walk along the Immigrant Trail. The Humboldt River route actually went from a point south of Lovelock, as I've already mentioned, from a place called Humboldt Bar. This would be just south of Lovelock, immediately west to meet the Truckee River. And here is the place where, near where there's a parting of the way, either going that way or going south along the Carson River. Good map showing where this Humboldt Bar or Humboldt Dike is, where marker number 1 is, by the way. Up on the upper left is the Interstate Highway. 95A is shown on the left of the map. And one can drive over to the dike and see where the trails either go west or go south. Interstate 80 is shown where the arrow is at the top of this map. The marker for Humboldt Dike is shown in the foreground, and indeed it's a very historic place. So along the Truckee River, we go across the northern portion of 40-mile desert, and the first thing is, after traveling over all that dry, dusty land, people, and especially the animals, were anxious to drink of the waters of the Truckee. And in this artist's depiction shown here, that's exactly what's happening. And going along the Humboldt River, along the Truckee River east of Reno, here's a famous hill which many schooners, these Argonauts, had trouble going down, and it's the subject of many diaries. It's about 15 miles east of Reno. Near the sewage treatment plant east of Sparks, east of Reno, was the famous Jameson Station, and there's been excavation in that area, and here's some pottery and things that have been found showing that Jameson Station was a trading station for the Immigrant Trail, the people on the Immigrant Trail. I mentioned trading stations because as people came this far west of Missouri, they were running out of supplies, running out of food, materials, even clothing. And so California traders would go over to a place like Jameson Station. There was a station over near Dayton, Mormon Station, Genoa, to trade with the immigrants. They'd get trade for jaded animals, horses, in gold coin or coin in exchange for food and supplies and clothing. Good map showing what I've been talking about, people traveling along the Truckee River from the Humboldt Bar, going through Reno and on up over, and the map is 1853, showing Lake Bigler, which is now Lake Tahoe. We'll be soon talking about the Carson River route going through here past the modern Dayton and Carson City areas to Mormon Station and on over the pass up through the Sierra Nevada. Close up of the area through the Truckee Meadows, and it even shows a creek going southeast that's still there today. Another picture of the Immigrant Trail as it's going through the Truckee Meadows. It's right behind Rattlesnake Hill, and this is a pristine section that's hardly traveled on, and therefore it's left intact as it was way back in the days of 1849. And one can travel by, look at the guidebook that we published, and follow that, follow and actually walk along the Immigrant Trail of 160 years ago. West of Reno, there was trouble going through Dog Valley, and you can see the numbers 1, 2, and 3 indicating various alternate routes of the Immigrant Trail through Dog Valley, west of Reno. And way up high up on the past Donner Summit, or there's other summits up there. You can, near Roller Pass, the wagons actually had to be disassembled, taken apart, hoisted up rocky areas like this, reassembled later. A lot of extra work, but the big reason to get to California was because it was land of opportunity for the immigrants, either to mine for gold or to engage in farming or merchandising, open up businesses, whatever. Unfortunately for the Donner Party of 1846, they were trapped near the town of Truckee, Alder Creek, and they chopped down trees. The snow actually got that high, as you see there, and so it was above that area. The trees were cut and used for fuel to try to keep warm, but it was still a miserable existence. This picture was taken about 1914, before even these tree stumps were taken down, and the writer there on the left is showing how high the snow was for the Donner Party of 1846. The Carson River route is another route which went from a point south of Lovelock and landed along the Carson River, Fort Churchill, along past Silver Springs of today, past the modern area of Dayton, Carson City, and Genoa. And here is the parting of the ways again. We've shown this map before in this detail. Now we're showing it more so in connection with Highway 95. We passed some Indian caves down heading toward in the direction of Fallon, but west of Fallon. And here we go again, the marker showing the one trail going west to Wadsworth, over Reno and westward, and the other trail going south at Humboldt Bar down to the Carson River. But to do the Carson River route, you had to travel across the dreaded 40-mile desert where you see absolutely nothing is growing, no water, only miserable time going across 40 miles. Many immigrants just traveled at night because it was too hot during the day, and many an animal perished. Mark Twain said as he went past this 40-mile desert that it was just almost every 10 or 15 feet was a dead animal, jettisoned cargo from the schooners, from the wagon trains, but the whole idea was to survive and get to the Carson River. Here's the night scene as depicted by an artist traveling because it was much, much cooler. We're getting down to maybe a cool 80 degrees instead of the 95, 100 degree weather during the day. Another picture of death and desolation out there along the 40-mile desert. Animals just simply would not go further. They're just too exhausted, and they lay down to die. And so here's everyone in the wagon. They simply had to discard, sometimes even small pianos were brought, other things, furniture, just simply left behind on the 40-mile desert in this day of 1849. And here we're at the point of Ragtown. That's where the Carson River met the 40-mile desert ended there, and now immigrants go west past later Fort Churchill, Buckland Station and Buckland's Ranch that I was just showing, going west toward modern Dayton, and finally we're catching up with the immigrant trail in the area of Dayton, Carson City. This is Gold Canyon, and this is worthy of many a story. In 1849, this is where the gold was first discovered in Nevada, and immigrants of 1848 and 1849 also were very curious when they came to along the Carson River at a point near Dayton and would explore for gold. But of course they did not stay. They stayed overnight and went on westward to meet their objective going across the Sierra Nevada and get westward on the Mother Lode. The California Immigrant Trail of 1849 has had, as I mentioned earlier, is caused a lot of fascination among history people that love history, ever since the first few years of all the immigration westward, and many of them kept diaries. And there were two major routes through western Nevada. At a point south of Lovelock and Humboldt Bar, many would go completely west and hit the Truckee River, Reno, and over the Sierra Nevada. Others would continue south across the 40-mile desert and go along along the Carson River to a point near Genoa, and then up and over the Sierra Nevada near Woodford's, and finally into California, the land of milk and honey. As we left off from the first segment, at a point near Dayton, which is at the south end of this map, the most significant canyon for gold in Nevada was Gold Canyon, where gold was discovered as early as 1848 in that ravine north of Dayton on up toward modern Virginia City. So it's an 11-mile extension from Dayton to go all the way up there, and it was prospected by people like William Prowse and Andrew Blackburn in 1850. But they were just waiting for the snow to melt over the Sierra and was not really wanting to stay in Nevada. So there's no lure to remain in Nevada, even though they did find gold, but it was low grade and they knew California was much better. But others, beginning in May, actually described miners in the area in late May of 1851. There's the famous Parsons diary, and she says there was almost 200 miners up and down Gold Canyon mining for gold, working for $3, $5 a day. And she says the whole Gold Canyon, and that's on this map extending north and south, was alive with diggers from the mouth up, about 200 in all. And so about 16 journals actually record miners in Gold Canyon. We don't know how long they stayed, but probably by the end of summer, almost all of them had left because for placer gold mining, that is mining with rock gravel gold, you need water. Or if you want to do something called dry washing, then that's dirty work where you put your screens up and sift gold bearing sand and rock through the sifters to get down to gold particles. So at the future site of Dayton, which never began existence until 1861, there was actually these these traders from California coming over, bringing foodstuffs, fresh animals, other merchandise and supplies, and clothing, which they traded with the immigrants, who often would trade worn-out animals or gold and silver coin to get needed supplies before continuing west on the immigrant trail. Up in Gold Canyon, here is what an artist might depict of people washing in the creek there looking for gold. The man on the right has a gold pan, and the gold is heavy and stays in the pan, while the lighter rock and sand is allowed to by squishing the pan, it leaves the pan, and of course the water as well. This picture is actually taken in California, but it might serve as to how these gold panners in Gold Canyon were working in 1849, 1850. Another view, the same thing, showing how Gold Canyon might have looked, but this picture also was taken in California, because there was no one taking a picture or sketching Gold Canyon that early. No depiction of Gold Canyon until at least about 1860, 10 years later. But to explain what was going on past Gold Canyon, that would be Dayton, past Carson City, Highway 395 from Carson City to modern Minden would be going right through here. The road, the Jacks Valley Road, takes off here, and it's right where it is on this map, going right into the modern town of Genoa, and on over toward Woodford's, California. The first Mormon station was built about 1.1 miles north of modern Genoa, or back in those days in the early days called Mormon Station. It was abandoned in 1850 in favor of a better site where there was a creek coming down in modern Genoa, and the streets conformed to this map even after 160 years. The first Mormon station was the most prominent of all of the immigrant trading posts, because actually buildings were built, not just dugouts, not just tents or lean-tos as over near the modern Carson City area or the modern Dayton area, or even up toward Reno on the other trail, but real buildings, not a stockade, but definitely 3 or 4 buildings built, and crops were planted, because the people that were settled in at Mormon Station in 1850 were anxious to trade with the settlers as well, with the soon-to-be settlers of California, the people on the immigrant trail. But when Colonel John Reese left Salt Lake City in April, actually almost into May 1851, that's 1 year later, he actually decided to reestablish Mormon Station at now the present town site of Genoa, where it's been ever since, uninterrupted. And John Reese built a stockade, and there's a replica of that today called Mormon Station Historic State Park. And he actually built a couple of buildings. They lasted for about 60 years until there was a fire. But all that is replicated there in the state park. And there were others that settled in Mormon Station. And Mormon Station kept that name until about 1855, when it was renamed Genoa. To get down to Mormon Station off 395, one would take the Jacks Valley Road right here and go down. And the fun of history hunting is to actually find the Immigrant Trail, and here it is right here with GPS markings. And if one would go from Carson City, take the Jacks Valley Road and the famous turn right here, John Espargar's ranch would be way down over in there. As you take that turn, you can look off the right, and the Immigrant Trail is plainly seen as it was worn down by the immigrants for 10, 15 years after 1849, coming through that area and heading right down toward Genoa. Again, I want to show you the map of this map was done by the Surveyor General of California, 1853. It's significant because it shows along the Carson River Trail going past the modern area of Dayton, the modern area of Carson City, into Mormon Station. And it's remarkable that both Mormon Station and Carson Valley are mentioned on this map of California. This is the earliest depiction of a settlement in Nevada, in what's now modern day Nevada, and years before any other place was ever mentioned. And close up showing the Carson River and the Mormon Station. The Mormon Station got to be quite famous right from 1850 and 1851. There was published in Salt Lake City in 1851, Great Salt City in the state of Deseret, as Utah was known at first, a Mormon waybill for the gold mines. And this was another one of those guidebooks. If you remember earlier, we talked about Hall's guidebook across plains and mountains, so forth. This was only a guidebook in the western Nevada area and also between Los Angeles and San Francisco, called the Waybill to the Gold Mines, showing all the springs and the routes of travel and what they call the various cutoffs, because there would be main trails and sometimes there was alternate trails. There's only about 4 of these copies left in existence. They're very rare, but very informative, further cementing the early establishment of Mormon Station in 1850 and 1851. Also in 1851, when people started to settle in at Mormon Station, they actually kept records, and it was called Carson Valley, 1851, recording land deeds, land transactions, marriages, people that were fined for breaking law in various ways. And as early as 1853, the United States government established the first post office within modern Nevada at Carson Valley. It was named the Carson Valley Post Office, but it was at Mormon Station. And then 2 years later, this was all still in Utah territory, as it says here. In 1855, the area was called Carson County, and Mormon Station was named the county seat, where all government transactions took place. There was no other counties in modern Nevada until 1861, when Nevada Territory was founded. This is a picture of that first station built by Colonel John Reese. Very crude, but it served the bill. It allowed for transactions to be made between the immigrants and John Reese at his station. Another shot from another direction of that first station at the station house at Mormon Station. John Reese people have been living at Mormon Station, Genoa, since first part of June all the way to the present time. And you see, late 1851, Colonel John Reese has his land down here. But you can see other people are making claims all up and down the west side of Carson Valley. And it was quite a going place. And by 1852, 1853, there were 50 or 60 people living at Mormon Station. Carson County was created in Utah, out of Utah Territory in 1855. All these, Deseret, Tooele, Weld County, Millard, were all counties that had county seats in modern Utah. And but there was enough people in western Nevada to create Carson County, Utah Territory. And where it says Mormon settlements, that's a euphemism for Mormon Station, became the county seat. Now this term Carson Valley sometimes would not only be the modern area of Genoa, Minden, and Gardnerville, which would be right here, but also Carson Valley would extend eastward almost to Walker Lake. This area is called Carson Valley. So sometimes in the early accounts they say gold is being panned in Carson Valley. They really mean above Dayton in Gold Canyon, as I mentioned earlier. Another 1855 map showing Reese. Now that's another name for Mormon Station or Genoa. And you can see Ragtown is on the map. That's that settlement where people would come across the 40-mile desert from the point south of modern Lovelock, the 40-mile desert, hit the Carson River, then go west. You see nothing around the Dayton area because there was no permanent settlement there. So there's been a debate about Nevada's oldest town, whether it is Mormon Station, Genoa, or Dayton. And the claim for the Dayton people really originated only in the last 10, 15 years. But it settles around what the word settlement means. A settlement means a place where people settle down, settle in. Like I just showed you on the colored map previously, a minute ago, Mormon settlements was where Genoa was. There was no settlement, permanent year-round settlement in the Dayton area until the late 1850s. That's about 8 years after Mormon Station was settled. And then the immigrant diaries. Yes, there are a couple of diaries that mention a trading station in the modern Dayton area, but of course they didn't stay there year-round. They only were there from roughly August, September, and October, and when the immigrant season was over and people stopped going west because the Sierra Nevada would be all packed in with snow, they just simply left and went back home and not to return until late spring, early summer, when they could trade with the immigrants in. There were newspaper accounts in California that described Mormon Station. Hardly any accounts, only a few, for Dayton and Gold Canyon. And then contemporary maps, I've already shown you how that as early as 1852, Mormon Station's on the map. No map shows Dayton until 1859 when Captain James Simpson designated Dayton as Chinatown. And then by 1861 it was renamed Dayton. And also postal records, we have shown that Carson Valley Post Office at Mormon Station was established in 1853, whereas Dayton did not get a post office until 1862. That's almost 9 years later. Nevada's oldest town, Nevada's oldest settlement is without a doubt Mormon Station, Genoa, and maybe Dayton is not even in second place. Carson City was established in 1856 and has uninterrupted settlement, and Franktown between Carson City and lower end of Reno has been continuously settled since the late 50s. But around Gold Canyon there are distinct times in 1853, 1854, and 1857 that there was nobody there, and it was abandoned. And the oldest settlement, it means the oldest continuous settlement in Nevada, without a doubt, being Mormon Station, Genoa. Mormon Station, the Genoa area, the area of Dayton was also hindered for permanent settlement because Hall Station, he was the first man there, Spafford Hall, in downtown Dayton. He had a 319.5 acre plain, and this discouraged anyone settling around him. Whereas way back on the map I showed you of Dayton, there was those little 10-acre claims where there were 6 or 7 different people living. That makes a settlement, a place where people settle down, settle in, one with a view toward permanence. These Hall Station, later known as McNarland Station, Ormsby Station, all the way down the line to the late 50s, these were all abandoned in the fall of the year. There's a report by the Surveyor General of California surveying the eastern boundary of California. He spends page after page describing Mormon Station in Carson Valley, perhaps as many as 15. One little paragraph about the area east of Carson City, he notes no settlement in the area. A man named Huntington in 1854 travels from a point west of Salt Lake City, Grantsville, and goes along the Immigrant Trail in 1854 and all the way through western Nevada and up into California. He says that Mormon Station is the only actual settlement between Grantsville and Placerville, or Hangtown as he called it. The only actual settlement. Where does that leave the Dayton claim for oldest settlement? It leaves it high and dry on the beach. This is the Captain James Simpson's map of 1859, where it shows in the middle of the map Chinatown, that would be where Dayton is. Carson City is already 2 or 3 years earlier, and Genoa is already 7 years older than Chinatown. And Chinatown, because many Chinese were settling there just around the time that silver was discovered up in Virginia City, so it's on the map. Chinatown established as a lower, kind of a low-grade suburb of Virginia City. No post office, no newspaper, whereas Genoa had a newspaper in 1856. No county seat, and no postal records, and no map until this one appeared in 1859. Truly, the claim for Genoa is superior. Here's Captain Simpson's people entering Genoa from the lower right here. Entering Genoa, there's about 250 people living here below Job's Peak, whereas the Dayton area only had 25 or 30 people. And this is an artist's depiction of Simpson coming in to Genoa in 1859. Simpson wrote his report, published years later, and describes Dayton as the future Dayton area, Chinatown, as a place where many Chinese were settling in. Some were placer mining for gold, some were in laundry, so forth. Whereas Genoa had 3 stores, post office, newspaper before it was moved to Virginia City, county seat of Carson County, Utah Territory. Hutchins' California Magazine in 1860 visited all of the Washoe country as it is described, as it was known then. The early name for Nevada was Washoe. In 1860, he came and he went to Genoa. He saw a thriving settlement. He went to Carson City, Silver City, Gold Hill, Virginia City. He even did not even go to Dayton because it was not probably worthy of his time. Here's another picture of Virginia City. By that now, Virginia City's 1 year old. In Hutchins' California Magazine, very popular, describing the new silver diggings at Virginia City on the Comstock Lode, or the Comstock Lead, as it was also described. Genoa here at the same time, as you see, was a thriving settlement, 1860, and no picture of Dayton, of course, because it would not come into existence till the next year. 1 mile south of Genoa, it was Wally's Hot Springs, another small settlement. And it was a thriving place where people come down from Virginia City to kind of blow off and to enjoy the resorts at Wally's Hot Springs. I'll cool this thing down a little bit. This is the story of the early immigrants coming west and the varied trail routings through western Nevada. Along those trails sprang up seasonal settlements for traders, and a few of them became permanent settlements, the chief of which was Mormon Station in Genoa, and of course another one would be Carson City and the later Dayton area, after Chinatown became Dayton in 1861 when surveyed for a town, chiefly to become a new milling site for Virginia City and the Comstock Lode.
El Dorado County is aptly named. Roughly translated, it means land of golden opportunities. And with over 1,800 scenic miles stretching from Folsom Lake to Lake Tahoe, the opportunities are indeed breathtakingly obvious. One thing in El Dorado County is not so easy to see. Yet it's breathtaking in scope, in scale, and grows with each passing day. It's an epidemic called hidden hunger.
That's a question I always get asked, is who are the needy in El Dorado County? In other urban sprawls and areas like that, you could identify the homeless and the needy by pushing shopping carts or sleeping in doorways. In a rural setting like El Dorado County, it's not like that. It's your friends, it's your neighbors, it's people you go to church with, it's people that your children go to school with that aren't proud of their situation, that don't want anybody to know.
Was the homeless population using the charitable services of food closets and soup kitchens. Today, it's ordinary people with jobs, families, and homes, struggling to make ends meet.
Me and my husband both work, but with the 3 kids and the 5 of us at home, we still need help.
I'm a senior citizen, and the same day my husband was killed, I was classified disabled, and so I live on very low income. And if it wasn't for the food bank, there would be meals I would not have.
Now envision a golden opportunity to help the people who are suffering in this seemingly affluent community. That opportunity begins here, at the food bank of El Dorado County.
We have built a food assistance network that provides service through a network of over 50 charities made up of maternity homes, soup kitchens, food closets. Together, we're able to cover El Dorado County as a whole.
If this wasn't here, I think there'd be a lot of less fortunate people that I don't know how they would survive.
But I use it to help me just to get by day by day. That's all I can do.
One of the organizations that receives food assistance from the food bank is the Boys and Girls Club of El Dorado County.
We provide an after-school program for the boys and girls of several school districts here in the county, and we hold programs, we feed them, and we let them be kids.
Welcome to the computer lab.
We all work hard at keeping these doors open for these children, and with the food bank, we can keep our doors open.
Also in the food bank of El Dorado County's Food Assistance Network is the Upper Room. 7 days a week, hungry people near Placerville are served a hot, nutritious meal.
It's between 3,500 and 3,700 meals a month that go out of here.
Oh, we couldn't do it without the food bank.
We know people need help.
The food bank partners with many other faith-based organizations throughout the county. Their beliefs are many. Their goal is one.
When you experience and see somebody come in who's hungry, it breaks your heart. And to be able to tangibly hand somebody a meal is a huge thing.
Almost 98% of our food comes from the food bank.
So the food bank pretty much provides and meets all of our needs at U-Turn for Christ.
People that are just living on the edge, trying to survive. And food is a huge part, and to get people nourished right so that they can start their recovery in life, And the need is bigger than ever. The urgency is bigger than ever.
As the number of people living at or below the federal poverty line grows, so does the epidemic of hidden hunger, in populations you might not expect.
When we first got involved with this program, we were mostly helping the senior veterans, those that, living on real tight incomes. And this year, we're going to find Iraqi war vets.
From soldiers to seniors, the need for food assistance is growing.
And I just can't emphasize enough how much it means to these older people just to have that little uplift in life.
Of course, feeding over 12,000 hungry people a month in a huge county like El Dorado requires an outpouring of money and donations. Many businesses have stepped up to join the fight. These efforts net over 4,000 pounds of food coming into the food bank every day.
When you come from a chamber, you're kind of business-oriented, and we've looked closely at the food bank. And the food bank, it operates very effectively, very efficiently.
We have a morning gleaning route that goes to over 15 grocers every morning and collects close to 3 tons of short-coated product.
Well, hunger is probably one of the most extreme forms of poverty, so to be able to keep those trucks rolling and keep that food bank with food inside, it's just a really good feeling.
The food bank is a really easy choice for us to make to help, because the food bank just gives so much of everything back to the community.
We are able to distribute over $3 million worth of food assistance to El Dorado County for a budget of 1/7 of that. And we do that through volunteerism and for purchasing product at very low prices.
Every individual can make an extreme difference, whether it's a dime, $1, $25, or just coming out as a volunteer.
Hopefully folks will see our Wells Fargo name out there and how much we give, and maybe that'll inspire them to come out and participate and do more for their community.
The food bank has worked hand in hand with the community for almost 10 years now, and the directive remains clear: to continue to feed people in need in El Dorado County. Today, we need your help, your support, and your commitment to work toward making this county hunger-free.
It's nice to know that there's that security there to be able to come somewhere and get a meal for my family if I'm in need.
There will always be a need for a food bank and food assistance programs in El Dorado County, and the only way we'll be able to maintain that is with the help of people like you from the community.
Give what you can, when you can. It will change someone's life, including yours.
Because there's people out there that need food, and people out there that need love.
Your help matters. Please give to the food bank of El Dorado County today.